For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guides for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the 5 years until retirement. Start refining your income plan now. Also, the retirement tax bomb. And what if you can't work as long as you'd planned? We'll talk about that. Then finally, gifting money to adult children. Give now or wait until later. My name's Jeff Shade. As always, I'm just here to ask the questions, but the words of wisdom and solid advice, they come from Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. I'll start with you, Randy. How you doing today?
Doing very well, Jeff. How about you?
I am doing fantastic now that we're together on the radio. And Jake, how is this fine Saturday finding you, my friend?
Doing great, Jeff. Thanks for asking.
Always glad to hear that. Hope our listeners are having a fantastic June weekend. My gosh, guys, we're almost halfway through this year, 2026, and we have got a fine show lined up for our fine citizens here of the last bastion of sanity, Springfield, Missouri. Randy, a lot of people think if they've saved enough money that they're ready for retirement, but you have said before that the 5 years before retirement may actually be the most critical planning period of all, 5 years and 10 years out. Why is that, Randy?
Sure thing. So saving money is important and building wealth is important, but for most people, they've looked at that money over there, they've watched it grow in their 401k or their savings accounts or their CDs, they haven't tapped it ever, and they really don't make the connection between what a nest egg is worth in dollars versus income dollars on a monthly basis and over many years looking forward. It's something that people just haven't thought a lot about. And of course, during those last 5 working years, we've said many times on here, people are generally making more money than they've ever made in their life. Their family is raised, they're out the door, they paid off the college debt, if there was any. And then by this time too, there's just a lot of things that are just needing to get buttoned up. Maybe you're paying off a house and everything is really looking rosy and you're ready to retire. So it's time now to really check the boxes that people don't check, but once in a lifetime when they get ready to retire as a general rule. And we got a great checklist over here to help people get through that. So it's just about planning and really thinking about what's it going to take for me to retire, when that income needs to come in, how we want it to come in, what are taxes going to cost, what if I have a health issue. All those things we need to plan for because we're looking at retirements these days of 20, 25, even 30 years.
So it's about putting it into high gear. It's turning on the afterburners now. Randy, when you run your marathons or you do your Ironman and so forth, you sort of pace yourself as you go along. But during the last 5 miles or so, do you speed things up? How does it work when you do that sort of physical conditioning?
Yeah, that's really a good analogy because, once you come to the last, it's kind of like you're running, you're riding, and you get to 50% and you go, okay, it's all downhill now, right? Yeah. And you start to think about that, but you think, okay, now wait a minute, wait, I got to hold back just a little bit because you might get tough at the end. And there is a hill up there that I had forgotten about. Yeah. But once you get down to the last 20 or 30%, now you can put the pedal to the metal. And that's kind of the way it is with retirement planning. But it's important that we remember that there's a hill up there. We don't break a chain. We don't have a flat on our bike. or we don't blow out our shoe, right? So all these different things come into play as we get close.
Yeah, and generally people are procrastinators too, those people who wait until the last minute for everything. So 5 years before, maybe I might want to start working one day. What is the biggest mind shift, Randy, that people need to make 5 years before retirement?
Well, a lot of people have been, like we had alluded to earlier, they've been saving for their whole life. And sometimes people are so ingrained with saving that even when they retire, they pull money out of their retirement accounts, pay the taxes, and put it back into a savings account at the bank. And so we often say, listen, now, we want you to have all the money that you need, but let's not pull money out and pay taxes needlessly.
Right.
So many times it's hard for people to have the mind shift away from working to going to play and really doing the things they've thought about for a very, very long time. So that's probably the biggest shift is, I've been working, I've had this income coming in. Now I've got to look to my retirement savings and Social Security to bring in the money I need each and every month to support the lifestyle I want.
Right, and there's the accumulation phase. We all know about that when you're saving for retirement. Then comes the distribution phase. But I think people sometimes have a really hard time making that transition from saving to spending money. And you talked about, I think it was a trip that you had made, Randy, once to visit a family. This was earlier in your career. And when you got done with the meeting, you were sitting on the couch and the guy said something about, well, I guess we'll go down to Goodwill and see if we can find another couch. Remember that story completely?
I do remember that story. We were sitting in that living room and that woman said, we could really use a new couch. And she was right. They could really use a new couch.
The springs were coming up out of this one.
Yeah, and the guy was just so tight, he couldn't let go, and he had like $960,000 in CDs, and he had to go to Goodwill to buy a couch.
Some things just never change. Let's start with income, Randy. How important is having guaranteed income sources in retirement?
For people to be able to lay down their head at night and go to sleep and wake up the next morning, get up and drink their coffee on the back porch, they need some peace of mind, right? So it's foundational that people need to know where income is going to come from and what expenses need to be covered and how reliable is the income and can I cover all my expenses? Have we thought about food, housing, healthcare, all those different things that come into play? And one of the key parts of that is how much is my Social Security going to be? When do I take my Social Security? I'm sure we'll talk about that soon. If you got pensions and things of that nature, we just need to make sure we know exactly where all the money is going to come from and really what it costs, because again, like I alluded to earlier, many times people are making more money at this stage of life than they've ever made, and they really haven't been on a budget. It's kind of a dirty word, right?
I know.
But they haven't been on a budget. And again, it's not that we're really trying to screw people down and put them on a budget and say, hey, you need to continue to save. What we're really trying to do is identify how much money you really need to pay the basic bills, and then how much play money do you want? That's really what we're after.
You're right. Paychecks and playchecks is about building that income floor and enough income to support the four walls, as we talked about. The roof, have food on the table, gasoline to get to and fro, and keep the lights on as well, too. That is the income floor. A lot of listeners wonder when to claim Social Security. Randy, you had alluded to that. Why is that decision so important? How much effect can that have on someone's income in retirement?
We've talked about this a lot in the past, and there's a lot of ways to file and a lot of reasons to file and not to file. Everybody's situation is different here. And Jake has often said, if you can tell me the last day that you'll draw your last breath, I can tell you exactly the most advantageous time for you to draw Social Security. But none of us know that day or that hour, right? The other thing is, depending on what your health is, can you continue to work or not? I mean, for some people, they're just trying to get to 62. I've had a couple of family members here of late. One had a stroke. The other one had some back issues where they were not able to work. And all of a sudden, when the checks stop coming in, I mean, it really changes things. So depending on your emotional state, your spouse's emotional state, and I don't mean that they're psychotic or anything, but, depending on what they're wanting and how they see life will also be determining that. So again, I think the biggest thing I would say is everybody's situation is different. And what we need to do is explore, number one, how much are those benefits going to be at all the different ages? Where are we at in your thought process of maybe the last 5 or 10 years of working? Where are we at on that spectrum there? And put all this stuff together and really look at what a retirement income can look like. And we've been doing this for a long time. In fact, here probably about 2 months ago, I remember this really plainly. This couple came in and they said, well, it's time. I said, what's that? They said, well, it's time to retire. I said, oh, okay. We've had them as clients for probably at least 10 years, maybe longer than that. They were building and building and building. And so we had talked several times about what Social Security would look like. And she happened to be a teacher. She had a pension. And with the recent changes in Social Security here in the state of Missouri, she actually got Social Security where she wouldn't have in the past. And he finally got his nest egg where he thought it was good. But all that came to fruition, and we pulled the trigger, and, it all came together, and the plan started, like I said, 10 or 12 years ago to get to where we are today.
Talking with Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group, we're talking about the 5 years before retirement and some of the things that you might want to think about. Our phone number, 417-889-7233. If you're 5 years out from retirement, you want to make sure you've got all the bases covered. Give us a call here at 417-889-7233. Sit down with Randy or Jake and talk about the things that you need to do to have a confident retirement. For those folks who have pensions, Randy, what about the decisions that you have to make there, lump sum or monthly income?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And not all pensions are created equal. And what I mean by that is First of all, let's talk about how a pension works. When you have this lump sum of money that the company has set aside for you over the years, you have generally two options. You can take the lump sum and put it into an IRA to avoid the taxes. Don't just take it out and spend it, because you will pay on the whole thing when you do. Or you can take the monthly income, and you could even set it up to where the monthly income survives you and goes to your spouse. In some cases, through teachers' pensions and things, you could even have it go to your kids in some cases. So there's a lot of different options there. But the main thing is, what are they telling me that they're going to give me? What am I trading? So let's say that for giggles, you got $1 million in your pension plan, right? And they say, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll pay you $40,000 a year and guarantee that for you and your wife if you just give us the $1 million. So remember, when you exercise the income, you now have lost access to the lump sum. So some people say, well, hey, $40,000 a year guaranteed for life. That's pretty good. Well, I would say this. I mean, I'll take the $1 million rather than the $40,000 for life.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that's not necessarily right, necessarily. Everybody feels differently about it. Some people like the security of knowing they're going to have a monthly income for as long as they both shall live. And others would say, you know what, I know if I make a 4% return on my $1 million, I can have my cake and eat it too. So the lump sum gives you a lot of flexibility. The taking of the income gives you guaranteed income for life. And I guess the long and the short of it is there's no one size fits all. And I will say this too, sometimes there are pension plans, and we've had a few of these come down the pike over the years, where it makes absolutely no sense the amount that they're willing to pay out against the lump sum. So we're going to look at it and evaluate each case on its own.
Well, from a practical standpoint, I look at it this way. Let's say that your annual income is $50,000 a year. You begin to take it at age 65, and it's $1 million payout. Otherwise, what if you only live 10 years? You're only going to collect half of that. So, yeah, I'm with you. I would rather have the lump sum invested and go from there. Let's talk about the role of annuities. People like them. They don't like them. They don't know why they don't like them. They just know that they don't like them. What role do they play in planning for retirement 5 years out?
You're so right, because sometimes it's just exactly that. People say, I don't want any annuities. I say, okay, all right, fine. We won't force you to have any annuities. And then if you ask for the basis for that.
By the way, what is an annuity?
Yeah,
right. What is that?
We'll ask next.
No, I don't like them.
I don't know.
We'll say this. Over the years, of course, we've had variable annuities that really became a big deal in the mid-'80s through even 2000. And the reason is the market was growing crazily. People were funding their 401ks to the max. They funded their IRAs to the max, and they were looking for ways to stuff money somewhere, let it grow and grow it tax deferred. So the variable annuities were fraught with high expenses. Some of these things had as much as 5.0% fees on them. But people didn't care because it kept them from paying 25% or 30% in taxes, right? That's kind of how that was. Now, fees are always a drag on your performance, and we want to make sure we control that. But in today's world, the modern fixed indexed annuity, which basically a fixed annuity says it guarantees your principal, it tracks an index for you to get your interest credited to your account, and then there's those that have lifetime income riders on them. And I will tell you, this business has been around. The FIA was created in 1995, so we're 31 years in, and here's what's finally happened. We just talked about pensions, and the way those things generally work is they work on the actuarial tables where we have this group of people that are retired through this pension plan, and we know that the life expectancy of them is X, whatever that is, right? But we know the insurance companies and the pension plans have looked at these and they say, well, we know we can afford to pay out this much because the average life expectancy of a retiree is X. Well, now after 35 years and track records of 35 years, the FIAs and these companies that are doing these lifetime income riders are actually paying out and offering some pretty attractive guaranteed income amounts. And I would caution people about just writing it off as something you don't want, because I'm telling you, in some cases, it can make really good sense. The other thing is there's some limited benefit for long-term care that you can put on these things. There's enhanced death benefits to help with a surviving spouse or whatever if you die early. There's just a lot of things that people need to look at, and they can play a very foundational role in basic expense covering.
Randy, I think another thing that people need to plan for is going to be healthcare, and in particular, long-term care. How should we look at handling that 5 years out from retirement?
Yeah, so that's something that we have to have a conversation about. with everybody. Now, nobody wants and nobody thinks that they're ever going to be going to a nursing home or be in a position where they would ever have to do that. And sometimes that's because, well, my kids have told me that I would never go to a nursing home.
Oh, yeah?
Now, Jake, on the other hand, says, Dad, I'm telling you, you're going to a no.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
That's right. I'm busy on the farm. You go to the other place over here.
That's right. I'm with my game camera out here. I'm getting it set up. But anyway, the thing to remember is that Medicare does not pay for long-term care. It can pay for rehabilitative care, maybe even up to 100 days, but the situations have to be just right. So long-term care planning should be a part of every conversation that you have in retirement and how you plan to handle that. And there are some people that will say, you know what, I'm just in denial. I'm not planning for that at all. There are those that would say, well, I'll try to cash flow it out of my nest egg. And then there are some that will say, I want some type of insurance. And there's no right or wrong answer there. I would just say it's something that needs to be explored and covered with each potential retiree.
Randy and Jake, this has been a great conversation, but do want to talk to our listeners here for just a moment. If you are within 5 years of retirement, you're entering what we call the retirement red zone, and the decisions that you make during these final working years can have a bigger impact on your retirement than the previous 20 years of saving. A mistake with Social Security, taxes, withdrawals, or portfolio risk could cost tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. The good news is that those mistakes are often preventable when you identify them before retirement begins. That's why here at Floyd Financial Group, we're offering a complimentary retirement income analysis and retirement review. We'll show you where your retirement paycheck is going to come from, how much risk you're taking, whether you're paying unnecessary taxes, and how to create an income plan designed to last as long as you do. If you'd like that, call 417-889-7233. Absolutely no cost, no obligation, and certainly no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. It's 417-889-7233, also online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Randy and Jake, it's time for a break. We come back here on Show Me the Money. We're going to be talking about the retirement tax bomb when our show continues here on 104.1 FM, KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Randy and Jake Floyd, with Jeff Shade.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money. And in this segment, we're going to be talking about the retirement tax bomb.
Oh my gosh. Oh. And that's the typical reaction when you say taxes. People usually just groan, oh my gosh. But you know, when you really think about it, if you've been to other parts of the world and Europe, I mean, our tax rates are really not that bad considering what people pay in other parts of the world. So let's dive into that. Randy, most people spend years worrying about the stock market risk, but you say one of the biggest threats to retirement may actually be, along with healthcare expenses, is going to be taxes. What do you mean when you say the retirement tax bomb?
So a lot of people have been saving money into 401ks, IRAs, and tax-deferred instruments for a very long time. At some point, you're going to have to pay the tax bill, especially on the IRAs and 401ks. The government says, look, you've been tax deferring this for a long time. And so now the RMD, the required minimum distribution age, is 73 for most people, could be as late as 75 for some listening to this program now. So basically the RMD just said, hey, there's a certain amount of money we want you to take out. The government wants you to take out a little less than 4% that first year of whatever your retirement nest egg is. That's the IRAs, 401ks, 457s. Not the Roth. If you've been doing some Roth investing, you're not going to have to do it there. But the RMDs are on all these things that have been tax deferred and things you haven't paid taxes on. For some people, this is millions of dollars. For most people, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not something that's a big tax bomb for everyone. It may be just a small explosion. That's why I told somebody the other day, I said, you know, that blew my mind. I said it was a small explosion, but it still blew my mind.
It was just a small grenade. There's no such thing as a small grenade. You're too close to it, it's going to get you.
But anyway, sometimes people are shocked that Social Security is taxable.
Yeah.
They're shocked that they're having to pay taxes on their retirement income. And so for some people, the tax time bomb is a huge one. And we have people that want to do Roth conversions and things to avoid passing that tax burden either to themselves or onto their kids.
Now, Randy, when you take a look at your account balances, you see how much money you've got, but does it show you how much future tax liability that you're going to have?
No, unfortunately, probably if it did, everybody would save differently.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Anytime you look at a 401k, part of that money belongs to the IRS. And depending on what you're planning to spend, it varies greatly. But then again, if you need a new roof on the house, if you need a new car, your kids have a problem and you got to take money out to help them, all those things create unexpected taxes that you just didn't plan to have. But really, just focusing on growing your accounts sometimes is not the best thing. It's important. And it might be for you that it's exactly what you need to be doing is finishing growing that nest egg. But for others, it may be that you need to be kind of rethinking where you're putting money now and what the future tax bombification of that is.
I like those when we create new words here, but it really does apply to this conversation, Randy.
Straight out of Bradleyville.
Yeah, straight out of Bradleyville. There you go. Retirement isn't about how much you've saved. We've said that before. It's how much you get to keep after Uncle Sam sticks his hand out and puts his hands in your pockets and takes that money away from you. Many people assume that they're going to be in a lower tax bracket, Randy, when they retire. Is that always true?
It's not always true. However, many times it is because there's certain taxes that you don't pay. So you don't have to pay Social Security tax anymore, which we know is about 7.65% that you pay for Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. You're probably not funding your retirement plan anymore, so that's kind of a tax when you're working, right? Because we know that you're not getting to spend it, it's going somewhere. But, they haven't thought about, hey, what if I have to take the IRA withdrawal? If I buy a new car, how does that affect my total income tax? So sometimes it could be higher, but most times it's going to be probably about the same, except for, like I said, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security that they're holding from your check now.
Talking with Randy and Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. We're talking about the retirement tax bomb. Even if it's not a giant bomb and it's a grenade, it still can hurt you quite severely. 417-889-7233. 417-889-7233. We'll get you fixed up here so the retirement tax bomb doesn't blow you up. Let's talk about RMDs, Randy, required minimum distributions. What are they? How do they work? Why do we need to be concerned with them as far as a tax conversation goes?
So your 401ks, your 457s, your 403bs, your thrift savings plan, all those things, if you have those in traditional tax-deferred accounts, at some point in the future, the government's going to require you to start taking money from there. And that's what's called the required minimum distribution. All it basically says is you got to take some money out of here and realize the tax. Okay.
Right.
Now, if you don't take the money out, what happens is they charge you, it used to be a 50% penalty, but since the Secure Act 2.0, it is 25% penalty, which is still a lot because let's face it, if you've got $1 million in a 401k and you have to take out 4%, that's $40,000. Well, 25% of $40,000 is still $10,000.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. You had to pay the tax on it and get the penalty. So out of the 40, you might get 20, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that's very important. And we have one of our staff members here that kind of tries to track all that stuff to make sure people don't stub their toes and get hung paying that penalty for sure. Depending on your situation, starting RMDs can put you into the next higher tax bracket. It could create extra premiums. It's called IRMA. That's an income adjustment on your Medicare. If you have too much income, is there such a thing?
I don't know that there's too much. Maybe with Bezos or somebody like that, you're going to have too much income.
But you could end up paying more for your Medicare Part B and also for a drug card as well.
Right. So that is something people need to be concerned about, too, is Aunt Irma. And that, as you said, is going to be how much you pay in those Medicare premiums. And they go back, what is it, like 2 years? Is that how it is determined how much you're going to pay?
Yeah. Basically, they look back a couple of years and they're figuring out how much they need to ding you for. If you get it low enough, it will go away after a couple of years if you get your income low enough. But again, we need to be thinking about what that's going to look like before we get there. Now, let me say this. If you are somebody that's done very well and you're going to have $200,000+ a year in income, IRMA is going to be there with you when you get north of that number. And if you're one of these that's maybe you've been a physician or something where you have a lot of income in retirement, you can pay a substantial amount more for your Medicare than the average bear.
Right. Aunt Irma is always in that back bedroom waiting to strike as far as taxes go. One strategy that we hear about when we talk about taxes, Randy, is Roth conversions. What exactly is a Roth conversion and how does it apply to tax planning?
Yeah, so a Roth conversion, basically, if I've got an IRA, a 401k, a 457, a 403b, if I have any of those things, I can convert those from traditional, where it's been tax deferred, into Roth IRAs. And what it really boils down to is you take that money now and pay the taxes today. And after you've set up that account and you've held those investments in there for 60 months, 5 years, anything you take out plus all the gains always comes out tax-free. So it's a way for people to do one of two things: either build themselves a long-term tax hedge for themselves in the future as they need income to offset inflation, or to basically prepay the taxes for their beneficiaries, the people that are going to inherit the money. And we have quite a few people that want to do that. I would tell you that a Roth conversion is probably worth a conversation. And I would tell you that many times, unless you have a lot of years ahead of you to plan and do this slowly, it will not make sense dollars and cents wise for you. Now, for your beneficiaries, it could be a wonderful thing. But again, if you end up paying 30% taxes to do this, you also have 30% less money to earn for you in the future. So it's one of those things where it's not just cut and dried. It's something we need to talk about and consider all the current taxes, what the future tax looks like. And here's the thing: if you're going to be in the same tax bracket, whether you do it or not, does it really make sense? Probably not. So that's the things we talk about.
And we thank Senator Bill Roth of Delaware for this discussion about the Roth conversions. I think this came about 1997 or something. Does that make sense, Randy? Is it that old?
Yeah, it is.
Somewhere around in there. We hear a lot about investment diversification, Randy. What is tax diversification?
Yeah, so the tax diversification kind of works this way. Let's say I've got some Roth money that's coming in that's tax-free. If I need to tap it for something big down the road, I've got my traditional IRAs and 401ks that I know are going to be taxable, but I've really kind of planned that into my income along with my Social Security and maybe a pension. Maybe I've got a brokerage account that is mainly full of stock, and I've kept those stocks for a number of years. I have a lot of gains in there. As I take that out, it could potentially be that I've had that long enough where it's a long-term capital gain and I pay less tax or no tax, depending on what my tax bracket actually is. So when we look at tax diversification, we're looking at all the different angles that we can play. There used to be tax-free money market accounts, and there still is some tax-free stuff from the government and municipal bonds in certain states. But all that is tax diversification, and where we can pull income from and have a different tax impact. And for a lot of people, they're looking for some situations where, I've got my big nest egg, that's my 401k, but I'm trying to find out some other ways to generate maybe either more wealth and defer that tax and pay less when I take it out, or maybe I'm looking for income right now that is not going to be taxable either at the state or federal level.
Talking about the retirement tax bomb with Randy Floyd here at Floyd Financial Group. Again, our number, 417-889-7233. Randy, what are some of the biggest tax mistakes that retirees make?
Just not thinking about it, right?
Yeah, and, sticking our head in the ground sort of like the ostrich. It just doesn't go away, though.
Yeah. So I think it's basically not understanding that, number one, they can have a big effect on taxes that they pay. And sometimes I have people come in and say, I just want to pay off my house. Well, how much do you owe on it? Well, I owe $250,000 on it. Well, okay, so we put $250,000 along with your regular income of $100,000, and all of a sudden we're paying 40 cents on the dollar to pay that house off. Might not, and especially with some of them today, we still have 3% loans out there. Probably not the best use of money. Not planning at all, ignoring the fact that RMDs are going to be coming, and how do we handle that? And for some people that don't need the RMD, there's charitable giving and things that we can do to help offset some of those taxes. So again, I would say probably the biggest mistake is just not having a conversation about someone that understands and knows taxes.
So Randy, what is the ultimate objective when it comes to retirement tax planning?
Well, I think as much as all of us would like to say, I paid 0 taxes last year, that's probably not feasible for almost anybody, right?
Right.
We need taxes for certain things. I certainly like my roads to be nice when I ride my bike in the morning. I like to be able to go to a park and it's been mown so it's not over my head high with sunflowers and weeds,
Yeah.
But I think it's just to be efficient about where and how we withdraw money and fund our retirement. I think that's really it.
I think so as well, too. I want to leave our listeners with a thought here for this segment, and it might be just a little uncomfortable. If most of your retirement savings are sitting in a traditional IRA or a 401k, You might think that money belongs entirely to you, but no, it does not. You've got a silent partner in that account. His name is Uncle Sam. Every year that account grows, his share may be growing right alongside yours. A lot of retirees spend decades building a six-figure nest egg only to discover in retirement that a substantial portfolio eventually goes towards taxes, required minimum distributions, and higher Medicare premiums. That's why retirement planning isn't just about growing your money anymore. It's about protecting what you've built. If you've got money in retirement accounts, call Floyd Financial Group right now, today at 417-889-7233, and request your complimentary retirement tax analysis. Once again, that number, 417-889-7233, or you can also find out more about us online at floydfinancialgroup.com. We would love to talk to you. Randy and Jake, time for a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about what if you can't work as long as you'd planned, when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
We're back with your financial catch of the day, and it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money. You know, you've heard this thing out there, Jeff, that says, hey, you know, if I'm a little bit behind on my retirement, I'll just work a few more years.
Well, that always doesn't work now, does it, Randy? Because either your body or your mind is not going to let you do that. But this new survey says that nearly half of retirees left work earlier than planned. What stood out to you about this survey? Is that unusual? I mean, how many people have you gotten into your firm there where they said, you know, I wanted to work another 5 years. My company said no, or my body said no?
One of the things I tell people, and I've said this to my family and everybody, is I have enjoyed extremely good health most of my life, and I've been able to work and do things that some people just can't, especially the last few years here. I mean, I have not really missed a beat. But for some folks, I mean, health gives out. Maybe it's because of the type of work they've done. The body just wears out and they can't do it. Maybe the company laid them off, or maybe the company downsized. Maybe the company moved out of town. You know, down in Bradleyville where I grew up, we had Keeter Charcoal, we had the cheese plant, and the sawmills all around, right? It's kind of what we had.
And you also had the general store down there, too, the Floyd General Store that went out of business.
That was a thriving Walmart-sized thing right there.
The size of the back corner, I guess.
You just don't know. I mean, maybe you have to care for a spouse. Maybe you have to care for a parent. Retirement planning doesn't always just happen the way we think that it will.
Right, and according to the survey that I was referencing there, believe it or not, 46% of retirees across the country this year retired earlier than they expected. 46%. So you always can't plan on working as long as you want to. There are some other factors that come into play there. Why is working longer such a popular retirement strategy in the first place? And it's becoming more and more popular, Andy. I'm seeing the percentage of people who are working over 70 is really quite high, and over 75, it's higher than I thought it was, too.
Yeah, Charlie Munger, what was he, 90? I think 97, right, Jake, or something like that? And he never retired. He was Warren Buffett's business partner for 50 years or more, something like that. And of course, Warren just did step down at 94. For some people, that's how they are and that's what they want. And for other people, it just gives them a little bit of comfort knowing they could retire, but a little bit of comfort knowing they have that extra money to take an extra trip or do something for the grandkids or give to the church or charity or whatever.
Charlie Munger was about a month shy of 100.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, he didn't have to plan on paying for retirement, I guess. If you never retire, you don't have to pay for it. There's another good reason to work as long as you can, too.
I guess so. The other thing is they can continue to contribute to their retirement accounts. A lot of times people just need a little bit more time for it to grow, or maybe we're waiting on a market shift. Maybe we've had a downturn and we're waiting for a recovery or something there, where they just say, well, I'm going to keep funding my 401k. I'm buying low now. Later, I'll sell high, right? And also they can delay taking Social Security. Maybe they can delay taking money out of their 401k to support what they need financially. So really, it can make a huge difference, the extra years, especially for a lot of people if they are at their highest earnings years, which many times they are. I remember one lady we had that retired. She ran a logistical piece of software for a trucking company. She retired, and about 3 or 4 years later, they called her back and said, hey, we need you to come back and run this for us. And they paid her more then than she did when she was working full-time, and she was working part-time, remotely. So
Yeah.
there you go.
And that does happen. I've got a cousin who was called back to work too after, I think it was 3 or 4 years in retirement. Now he's back working again, and they're paying him more than he ever made. And again, we've referenced my Aunt Frida here, who's going to be 108 years old. She worked until she was 90. On her 90th birthday is the day that she retired. Now, they didn't call her back, but nevertheless, it does happen every once in a while. So if you're age 60 and you're planning to retire at 67, what do you think is the best thing that someone can do to account for the fact that I want to work until 67, but it's not my choice, and I might have to retire 4 years earlier? How should we plan for something like that, do you think, Randy?
Well, I will tell you, I'm not sure that any of us would even want to try to plan for that if we really wanted to work till 67, because really it's going to be something negative that has happened to us. But here's the thing I would say is everybody needs a plan, and you need to start working that plan as soon as you can. If you're 55 and you really haven't sat down and really thought about here's where we are today, here's where we want to go, you probably should be doing that and really starting to tweak out, because you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I was sitting with a guy last week, and he had heart attack couple of times, had stents, had a stroke, and he was okay now, but he's not working anymore, and he couldn't rely upon his stamina and strength to help him. So we don't always know that we're going to get to work till 62, 65, or whatever. So we need to have a plan in place that's growing and being fulfilled over time, and hopefully we can hang on. And if we end up a little bit short, maybe we were trying to shoot for the moon and we landed among the stars, right? So,
right. It's not a bad place to land. Talking with Randy Floyd, Floyd Financial Group, we're talking about retiring early, either on your schedule or someone else's schedule. Randy, for listeners who are in their 50s, maybe early 60s right now listening to the program, what do you think that they need to do when we get right down to basics to protect themselves if they can't work as long as they want to?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. Again, have a plan, be working that plan. We just never know what a day is going to bring. Hope for the best. Try to take care of your health.
All the basic things, but I think that people go into retirement, certainly they want to be debt-free, but still people have some debts. Would you say that it's a good idea? Yeah, obviously it's a rhetorical question. I don't know that debt is ever a good thing to have, but wouldn't you say that you want to get serious about eliminating debt? I mean, can you go into debt with credit cards or car loans, things like that?
Well, they certainly can, and we have a few people that have come through here that have done that, and it takes a long time to work your way out of that. Everybody comes from a different place in life, and sometimes we have to carry a little debt right up to the end. Everybody starts with a negative net worth, right? So when we're in our 20s and 30s and we're raising kids, we know we're mostly at a negative worth, and hopefully we're headed to that to where we can start to get to the positive side and level that out and hopefully get totally out of debt by the time it's done. If you are in a situation to where you have some debt that you're carrying and you want to know kind of how to start the process of trying to get rid of that, there's a process that basically you pay off debt that makes sense and add what you were paying on that debt to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, and then you can really start the snowball effect to pay that debt down. But I would say that you probably need to kind of sit down and say, okay, which one of these, and what I look at is the cash flow amount that it takes to keep that one paid. I think I kind of want to start with the biggest one and get rid of it.
Oh, yeah.
So that I can apply that to the other ones. Now, if you got some really ultra high interest rates on some of those things, you might need to think about that a little more thoroughly. But it's certainly something you should sit down and say, okay, let's develop a systematic plan to get us out of debt as quickly and efficiently as possible.
And Randy, I think that one of the biggest debts that most people have, if they're going into retirement with debt, is going to be their house. They've still got a mortgage. How do you feel about having a mortgage in retirement or not having a mortgage? Do you necessarily need to pay off your house? What do you think?
That's a really loaded question. So let's say that I owe $50,000 on my house and my monthly payment's $1,000. It might make sense to reach in and take $50,000 and get rid of that payment to free up $1,000 a month in cash flow. You kind of see how that works, right? Because $50,000. Now, if I have to take it out of a retirement plan, and now it's going to cost me $70,000, well, we have to think about, okay, so $70,000, even if I got a 10% return per year, is $7,000. I'm paying $12,000. You can kind of see how that math maybe works, right? To where I could probably never earn enough to offset the cash flow need. And if you are in a situation where you really need cash flow and maybe your health is not good and you're trying to figure out how do we actually make cash flow work, there's some things like that that might make sense. The other thing is, if you are thinking about cashing out of your 401k and paying lump sum for a car, don't do it. I mean, there's some debt that can make sense, especially if you're needing a vehicle and you can get near zero financing rather than taking money out of your IRA or 401k and paying the taxes and also not having that money to work for you anymore while you put it into a depreciating vehicle. That kind of doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of considerations on debt and the possibility of some debt in the future.
Right. I think anything with motors or wheels is ultimately going to go down in value. Let's talk about Social Security, Randy. Let's say that you want to retire at 67 and all of a sudden at 63, your employer says, unfortunately, we're going to close the plan here. You don't have a job anymore. If someone retires earlier than planned, should they automatically start their Social Security benefits?
Well, that's
another loaded question.
That's
there.
a loaded question.
Sorry about that.
So if you've got a big nest egg, if you've got a big 401k and it could make sense to float you for a little while, you'd have to just work the math and see what the payment at 62 is versus waiting to 67 and then see what kind of impact it's going to have on your 401k. Depending on the size of it, it may not have much impact at all. So rather than me answering that question, I'm not trying to skirt the question. It's just one that says that depends, and I'm going to have more information before I can tell you the answer to that question.
Right. That is often the response. It all depends upon your individual situation. There are pros and cons to doing that. I've known many people take Social Security at age 62, then they regret it later because maybe they were laid off from a job, but then a year later they find another job that was better than the first job, but they've already taken Social Security. Now, if you have taken Social Security for a year or less, Randy, can you suspend that, undo it, or how does that actually work?
You can't undo it, but you're going to have to pay it back.
Right. So if you receive $2,000 a month for a year, you got $24,000 you got to pay back before you start
exactly
over
right.
again, too.
So, yeah, it's always a big consideration, and I will just tell you that each situation is different, and if you're in a position like that or if you have some specific questions like that, give us a call. Let's sit down and talk.
Now, Randy, my grandpa wore a belt, but he also started wearing suspenders. It was just in case, the belt and suspenders, and how that relates to our conversation here is if someone has a job, we'll call that the belt. Should they add suspenders in terms of maybe a total separate career? Is it ever a good idea to add sort of a side hustle just in case to have a little insurance?
Well, my dad always had a side hustle his whole life. So he'd work a job, and then he would raise cattle. And then he generally had some old car he was working on to fix up and sell.
Yeah.
But he did not wear a belt and suspenders.
That's true. In fact, yeah, he did wear a belt, but no suspenders.
No suspenders. My grandpa loved those suspenders. Yeah.
So, yeah, it can be something. Everybody's different, right? For some people, I had one guy said, all I want to do is sit on my back porch, drink coffee, and watch my cows.
Right.
For other people, they want to go climb mountains. And for others, they want to travel all over Europe and have a trip every quarter somewhere. For some of us, we want to ride bikes, swim and run.
Right.
And fish. I love to fish. It just depends on what you want to do.
So let's get right down to it, Randy. What do you think is the lesson that listeners should take away from all of this conversation about having to be retired earlier than expected?
Yeah. I think that if you haven't started a planning process for retirement, and I would say if you're 50 or older and you haven't, you need to get it done. Even if you're younger than that, if you are of a mind, there's nothing, and I mean nothing, that replaces time and money invested, right? There's just nothing that replaces that's better than that. But if you don't have a plan, you need to sit down and really think about where you are, where you want to go, and what retirement may look like for you, or what partial retirement looks like for you. Not everybody is designed to just go home and be retired. I mean, they want to do other things. And so, like I said, who knows? You may be a Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett, or I guess you could be like some of these people I see once in a while. I haven't quite figured this one out yet. I'm 29 and retired.
Yeah. YouTube are one of those sort of people, kids who start a YouTube channel now. They've got all the money that they can spend and probably a little bit more. But that is so highly unusual. That's a fraction of 1%.
Slaved for years over a hot career there at 29, and he's fully retired
over a hot keyboard.
There you go.
Unemployable.
That's it. That's all they can do. And then they run through the money, too. And by the time they're 31, they need to go back to work, but they don't have any sort of employable skills.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to apply to most of our listeners here.
No.
But I do want our listeners to do a very simple exercise. Take out a piece of paper and write down, I think, 3 numbers. How much you've saved today, how much debt you still owe, at what age you plan to retire. Now ask yourself, what if I couldn't work another day after next year? Well, if that question makes you uncomfortable, it's time for a second opinion. Call us here at Floyd Financial Group at 417-889-7233 and request your complimentary retirement income analysis and review. One phone call could help you identify risks, opportunities, and gaps before they become expensive mistakes. Once again, that number, 417-889-7233, absolutely no cost and no obligation and no judgment. You can also find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Randy and Jake, time for a break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about gifting money to adult children. Give now or later when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
People of the Ozarks, step away from the fishing pole and prepare to be shown the money, because we're back with more straight talk and honest answers with Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about gifting money to your adult children now or later.
Right, and this is a very important thing. I want people to listen up to this conversation because I've heard of people whose grandmother gave them their house and it was absolutely the wrong thing to do. A lot of retirees tell us that they'd rather see their kids enjoy the money now instead of inheriting it someday. Is that always a good idea, Randy?
For a lot of people, that's exactly what they want to do, and it can be fine. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with that. There are certain moves that tax-wise don't make sense. But there's a lot of joy in seeing your kids do well, seeing your grandkids do well, know that people have what they need, or maybe in some cases more than they need, right?
Right.
But you have to be sure that you don't put yourself and your future retirement in peril while you do that. So one of the big mistakes that we do see is once in a while, we'll have somebody come in and say, my son's going to start a business and he wants $200,000. And I thought I would get into my 401k and give it to him. Well, first thing we have to remember is that $200,000 is probably going to cost you $250 to $275. And depending on how much income you have, otherwise it might be $300,000. Mm-hmm. And then number two, I haven't looked at this number in a long time, but I would say that it's probably 75% of all businesses fail in the first 5 years.
Yeah.
So you have to really know that you're never going to need that money if you're going to do that. Now, you don't always have to give away $200,000 or $300,000. Maybe it's much smaller than that. Maybe it's $5,000 here, $10,000 there. It can be much smaller.
And Randy, let's talk about that story that I just talked about. Grandma, please don't give me your house. Guy is living with his grandmother and he's helping her out. She's helping him out a little bit. And she decides one day, well, you're my only grandson, so I'm just going to give you my house and you can live in it and it'll all be taken care of. Why is that a problem, giving away a house or transferring title over when both parties are still living?
Right. So when you transfer property as a result of your death, what happens is, let's say that grandma bought this house and she paid $100,000 for it. Mm-hmm. She gifts it when it's worth maybe $250,000, and then when she actually passes, it's worth $500,000. Well, the son or the grandson got her $100,000 basis. So if he ever decides to sell that house, all of that between the $100,000 and the $500,000 is a capital gain, and he owes taxes on it. If she had just went ahead and set up an estate plan, probably using a trust, you can use a beneficiary deed here in the state of Missouri, and pass that as a result of her death, he would get a step up in basis to current market value. And so he would escape all those taxes. So it goes back to the old thing, put not your trust in money, but always put your money and your property in trust.
Right, and that is a very good example there, too. And again, it's called the step up in basis. Randy, how does someone know how much money that they can actually give away safely each year?
I still get this question once in a while. They'll say, hey, is it still $10,000 I can give away each year with no taxes? Of course, today that number, over the years, it gets revised and revised. So now we can give away $19,000 per person each year to anybody that we want. And there's no tax consequence to them or us because we didn't breach that $19,000 number. So as a married couple, if you have a child that you each want to give $19,000 to, you can give away that $38,000, and you can give away to a child or anybody that you want to. And here's the thing about it. If you go higher than that, all you have to do is file what's called a gift tax return. It doesn't mean there's any tax due. What it means is that the government wants to know how much money you're giving away now because they want to apply that to your lifetime giving or gift tax exclusion that you get over your lifetime, which for married couples now is probably in the $28 to $30 million range that you can give away. So the $19,000, while it's not a hard, fast rule, it's a great way to go ahead and give money if you want to and not have to file a tax form 709. You can give away a lot of money that way. Again, let's be clear. If you give away $19,000 out of your IRA, yes, you are going to pay the taxes on that money. Okay, I want to be clear on that. This would be money that's what I call tax current. Gotten a 1099 on it last year from the bank or wherever you have that money parked and you've paid the taxes on it. Just want to be clear on how the gift tax works.
So let's use an example here. Randy, could you and Lisa, for example, give Jake, Elizabeth, and Trevor $114,000 in 1 year without triggering gift taxes?
Absolutely, we could. And remember,
Hey, I'm ready.
and remember, there's actually no gift taxes due. All that you're going to do is you're going to file that form that lets the government know where you are against that $30 million.
All right. Well, I don't know that many of us are going to get up to $30 million, but let's go ahead and do what we're supposed to do. Can I gift investments instead of cash?
You can. Absolutely, you can. The other thing that's kind of interesting, well, here's what I would say. Let's be careful about gifting anything other than cold hard cash that's already been taxed.
So let's say that I got some random investments, CDs, or I've got something like that. You're saying don't gift that, but just give cash?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is when we're trying to avoid tax burdens for the person receiving, we want to pass that stuff if we can as a result of death or through some estate plan. We don't want to just try to, how would I say, manipulate the system.
Right.
So we want to make sure we're using money that's already been taxed or that we give, if it's something that's going to be taxed in the future, we want to make sure that we're using the proper tool to do that.
I think if you're listening and you're wondering what we're trying to say here is come and see us and we'll talk about it before you make any big gifts because there's a lot of implications both from a tax perspective, from a Medicaid nursing home perspective, from a lot of different perspectives, and we can help you avoid those potholes if you'll let us.
417-889-7233 is our number, 417-889-7233. If you'd like to set up that conversation, absolutely no cost and no obligation. What if grandparents want to help with education? Randy, let's say that you and Lisa want to help Trevor. What is a good way to do that?
Well, that would depend on who you talk to. Some people say the 529 plans are great.
Right.
Other people say
nope,
they are not so great. So if you have some extra money and you want to gift it or help your grandkids through college and things like that, I'm going to tell you, gift the money when it makes sense. Sometimes people say, the planning, you get a very small amount of tax benefit on the 529 plan by putting money in at the state level, nothing federally. The thing that I would say, too, is if that child does not go to college and doesn't use that for qualified education expense, they really can't use it, and you don't get the gains out like you do for education, tax-free. You can do an UGMA, a Uniform Gift to Minors Act account. Those can sometimes work actually better because they're not just earmarked for education specifically. All that stuff does count on a FAFSA, which is if they're going to need any type of student loan help and that sort of thing, sometimes it can hurt their possibilities there. I'm not a big fan of 529s, you can tell.
Yeah, I understand that completely. We want to put all the information out there and dig into it to make sure that it's the right thing. But 529 plans is something that I've heard a lot about. A lot of people use them. It's not necessarily the best thing to do. Let's talk about trust, Randy. When does a trust make sense instead of simply just writing a check to someone?
Yeah, so the trust is going to be something that generally is distributed after your death and can be held. Sometimes we have grandkids. In fact, when this came up yesterday, I had this couple in, they have 2 kids, they have 6 grandkids, and all the 6 grandkids are under age of majority, and I think they were in their late 70s, and they're saying, well, I want to make sure we provide for these folks. And so the trust is a good way to know that if somebody dies out of order or somebody under age is about to inherit something, the trust is going to hold that, protect it, and take care of it for them under the guidelines that you set up for that child as they age. Nobody wants to give $1 million to a 19-year-old, right?
No. No.
Or most of us don't.
Right.
We want to wait till they're 25 or 30, or maybe parse that out over 25, 30, 35, 40 as they age and can be, I wouldn't say trusted with money, just they understand money more than when they're 19.
Right, exactly. I understand that completely. There is a big drawback that people, I think, should understand before setting up a trust, and that is the word irrevocable. Why is that a drawback, or what should we understand about irrevocable trusts?
So I will tell you that I believe everybody should have an irrevocable trust.
Okay.
And there will be people on listening here today that go, why would that be? So irrevocable trusts, and that word irrevocable, and I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving legal advice, I want to be clear on that. The irrevocable trust does some things for us to protect against losing the family farm to a nursing home stay, or losing a house to a nursing home stay, or just money that we've saved. Because once you put that money in trust, it starts the 5-year clock ticking for Medicaid purposes for long-term care. So that way you won't be disqualified. The other thing about the irrevocable trust is it still does all the same things that a normal trust would do, and that is, again, makes all the contingency plans. If somebody dies out of order, who gets what, when do they get it, how do they get it, what are all the things that mom and dad or grandma and grandpa wanted to happen, they get to control all that from the grave, right?
Right.
So it's still good stuff. The trusts also have generally all the legal documents that we need, powers of attorney for healthcare, powers of attorney for finance, talks about ongoing costs of administration, who gets to administer it, how that works. They're powerful tools. The irrevocable trust, there's two types of irrevocable trusts. A lot of these are generation skipping, and not many people as a percentage need that necessarily. But the irrevocable trust for planning for beneficiaries and for Medicaid and long-term care, I would tell you it's an invaluable tool.
Randy, if you had to give our listeners one rule of thumb about gifting money to adult children, what would that be?
Everybody needs help along the way, so if they need a gift to help them kind of get out of debt or whatever once in a while, there are kids. What are we going to do? We're going to do that, right?
Right.
But I would say this, giving, it is an emotional thing. You're attached to it. It's really fun to do, I will tell you. I love to give money away. Now, I don't want a bunch of no, I'm just kidding.
I don't want a bunch of phone calls here, but hey.
I love to give money away. I love to see people happy, but
Sure.
Gifting is one of those things that you should think it through. Be sure that when you're gifting, that you don't set yourself up to be maybe unfair with some people. Also, make sure that you don't allow some people to put a little bit of onus on you that maybe is not due. I would say the biggest thing is if you're thinking about gifting and you're thinking about doing that, not that we're trying to control people's lives, but let's talk about it before you do and talk about maybe what some of the things you should think about might be, how that's going to affect that person. Are we giving into situations that are actually enabling somebody to be financially irresponsible, or are we really doing something that's going to help and pay dividends long term?
Randy, very good conversation here. If our listeners are wondering whether they can afford to help their children, grandchildren, or favorite charity without jeopardizing their own retirement, don't guess. Get a plan. Call us here at Floyd Financial Group at 417-889-7233, 417-889-7233. We will guide you through that process. No cost, no obligation, no judgment for this conversation. It is entirely complimentary. 417-889-7233. We're also online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Well, Randy and Jake, we're out of time for this week. I want to thank you for your time, but again, I want to thank the fine citizens here of Springfield, Missouri for joining us. So for Randy and Jake, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week right here with another edition of Show Me the Money on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning is offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.